Welcome to Legends and Lanterns. If you love listening to stories that will inspire you every day, remember to hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell to be notified once we drop a new story. We drop very exciting and inspiring stories twice daily. Sit back and enjoy this one. The Minister of Education decided to visit a government school in a poor village. On the way, the minister's car broke down, so he got out to examine the cause of the malfunction. Meanwhile, a small child passed by and asked the man if he wanted any help. The boy, named Chitty, watched as the Minister of Education's official car coughed, shuddered, and died in the middle of a sun-scorched dirt road, miles from the village school he was already late to inspect. Minister Adewale Okonjo pressed his palm against the dashboard as the sedan rolled to a stop, momentum carrying them a few final meters before the wheels locked in the red dust. The engine's death rattle faded into silence, leaving only the drone of cicadas and the tick of overheating metal. Sweat gathered at his collar. Not now. Beezy Alade, his senior aide, twisted in the passenger seat to check his watch. The inspection begins in 53 minutes. Through the windshield, heat shimmered off the road in liquid waves. Adewale could smell the sharp tang of petrol mixing with hot rubber. He unbuckled his seatbelt and the leather peeled away from his back, damp with perspiration. State News Network is already at the school. Beezy's jaw tightened. Senator Akinwale will crucify us if we're late. Adewale said nothing. Bello Akinwale had been circling like a vulture for months, waiting for any misstep to prove the education ministry was mismanaged. A breakdown on a routine inspection would feed headlines for a week. Behind them, Corporal Musa Ibrahim climbed from the driver's seat and raised a silver satellite phone toward the sky. He turned in a slow circle, device held high, before lowering his arm with a shake of his head. "No signal, sir." The words hung in the still air. Adewale pushed open his door and stepped onto the road, gravel crunching beneath his leather shoes. The sun hit him like a physical weight. He pulled off his suit jacket and draped it over the sedan's roof, already calculating distances and time. The nearest village with a working landline was 10 kilometers back. Even if they walked, we can fix it ourselves. Beezy fumbled with the hood latch, fingers slipping on the hot metal. How complicated can it be? Adewale moved to help him, and together they heaved the hood open. Heat poured out in a wave that stung his eyes. He stared at the engine's tangle of hoses, belts, and metal components, each one a mystery. Beside him, Beezy traced a rubber tube with one finger, then pulled back when it burned his skin. "Do you know what any of this does?" Adewale asked. "No." They stood in silence, the mechanical labyrinth mocking them. Sweat dripped from Adewale's chin onto a black plastic cover stamped with warning symbols. Somewhere in this maze of modern engineering lay the problem, but he had no more chance of finding it than reading hieroglyphics. Movement caught his eye. A figure emerged from the shade of a cluster of thorn trees, a boy, lean and wiry, carrying something green. He walked with the easy stride of someone who belonged to this road, his bare feet leaving prints in the red dust. As he drew closer, Adewale saw the green object was a toolbox, dented and scratched but clasped shut with careful hands. The boy stopped 3 meters away. His t-shirt hung loose on his frame, faded lettering across the chest, and grease stained the knees of his shorts. But his eyes were bright and watchful as they moved from the open hood to Adewale's face. "Do you need help, sir?" Beezy stepped forward before Adewale could respond, arms crossed over his chest. "This is a government vehicle. Go on, boy. You'll only get in the way." The child didn't flinch. His gaze remained steady, patient, as if he'd heard dismissals before and learned to wait them out. Adewale studied him, the way he held the toolbox with both hands, the precise manner in which he stood at a respectful distance but within earshot. There was something in the boy's posture that suggested confidence without arrogance. "Let him look," Adewale said. Beezy's mouth opened, but Adewale raised a hand and the aide fell silent. The boy approached and set his toolbox on the ground with a soft metallic clink. Up close, Adewale could see motor oil beneath his fingernails and a fresh scrape on one elbow. "How long since the last service?" The boy's voice was quiet but direct. 2 months, Corporal Musa called from where he leaned against the trunk. "Did the power drop gradually or all at once?" Adewale blinked. The question was specific, technical. "All at once. One moment running, the next dead." The boy nodded and opened his toolbox. Inside lay an assortment of tools, spanners, screwdrivers, pliers, some rusted but all organized by size. He selected a wrench and leaned over the engine, movements careful and methodical. The rumble of a motorcycle broke the quiet. Adewale turned as a battered bike rattled into view, dust plumes rising behind it. The rider slowed, engine sputtering, and pulled up alongside them. Courier Jonah Edom, identifiable by the canvas bag slung across his chest. Minister. Jonah killed the engine but kept both hands on the handlebars. Bandits spotted 2 kilometers west this morning. Armed. You shouldn't linger. The words dropped like stones. Jonah kicked his bike back to life and roared away before anyone could respond, leaving a trail of red dust that hung in the air and slowly settled. Adewale scanned the scrubland flanking the road. Thorn trees cast sharp shadows, and the tall grass rustled in a hot breeze. Anything could hide in that cover. His pulse quickened, a prickle of awareness spreading across his shoulders. How much longer? Beezy's voice had climbed half an octave. The boy removed the air filter with practiced efficiency, setting it aside and peering into the engine's dark throat. He didn't answer, didn't even acknowledge the question. His focus remained absolute, fingers tracing hoses and testing connections. The road fell silent again. Just cicadas and the whisper of wind through grass. Adewale's hand drifted to his hip, where no weapon rested. He was a minister, not a soldier. The tire iron in the trunk was the closest thing they had to protection. Movement in the scrub. 2 men stepped onto the road 30 meters ahead, materializing from the tall grass like ghosts. One wore a red scarf knotted around his neck despite the heat. The other revealed blackened teeth when he grinned. Both carried machetes, rusted but sharp enough to catch the sunlight. Nice car. The one with the red scarf took a step forward. Government plates. Must be carrying something valuable. Adewale moved to the trunk, yanking it open and grabbing the tire iron. The metal was warm in his grip, heavier than he expected. He positioned himself between the thieves and the boy, who remained bent over the engine, hands steady as he worked a fuel line loose. This vehicle is property of the Federal Ministry of Education. Adewale kept his voice level. You don't want this trouble. Red Scarf laughed, a sound like rocks scraping together. Ministry can't help you out here, Minister. They advanced another step. Corporal Musa moved to Adewale's right, using the sedan's door as a partial shield. Beezy had gone pale, sweat streaming down his face. The thieves inched closer, machetes held low and loose. Adewale tightened his grip on the tire iron, calculating distances. He'd never been in a fight not like this. Academic debates, political maneuvering, those were his battlegrounds. This was something else entirely. A sudden metallic crash shattered the tension. The car jack hit the road with a bang that echoed across the empty landscape, metal ringing against gravel. The thieves jerked back, eyes wide, heads swiveling to search for the source. Behind Adewale, the boy straightened from where he'd dropped the jack, his expression unchanged. Red Scarf and his companion exchanged glances. The unexpected noise had broken their momentum, planted doubt. Were there others nearby? Was this an ambush? Not worth it, Blacktooth muttered. Red Scarf spat into the dust. Next time. They melted back into the scrub as quickly as they'd appeared, grass swallowing them. Adewale stood frozen, tire iron raised, until the rustling faded and only dust marked where they'd stood. His heart hammered against his ribs. The boy crouched and retrieved the jack without comment, then returned to the engine. He worked a thin length of wire through the fuel line, withdrew it covered in dark sludge and wiped it clean on his shorts. Then he reconnected everything with quick, precise movements and stepped back. Try it now, sir. Corporal Musa slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine caught immediately, roaring to life with a smooth, powerful rhythm that erased all evidence of failure. Cool air began flowing from the vents. Adewale lowered the tire iron, muscles trembling with spent adrenaline. He approached the boy and placed a hand on his thin shoulder. What's your name? Chidi Nwosu, sir. You're brilliant, Chidi. A natural mechanic. Adewale studied him. This child who'd diagnosed and repaired what 2 grown men couldn't comprehend, who'd kept his head when bandits threatened. Why aren't you in school today? Chidi's gaze dropped to the road. His hands, still holding the wire, clenched slightly. The head teacher, Madame Okafor, she said I'm the stupidest child in class. The words came quiet but clear. She told me to stay home today so you wouldn't see me when you visited the school. The confession landed like a punch. Adewale's hand tightened on the boy's shoulder, and the road around them seemed to tilt. This child, who just saved a government minister and demonstrated more practical intelligence than most adults, had been labeled stupid and hidden away like something shameful. The engine idled smoothly, patient, while dust settled on the road and the sun climbed higher into the merciless sky. Minister Adewale Okonjo pulled open the sedan's rear door and gestured toward the leather seat. Get in. Chitty stared at the interior, climate-controlled air spilling out, leather gleaming under the dome light, and his toolbox suddenly felt heavier in his grip. Government cars didn't carry boys like him. They carried important people, the kind who wore suits and spoke in press conferences. Sir, Now, Chitty. Adewale's voice carried no anger, only certainty. We're going to your school. In the front seat, Beezy twisted around, eyes widening. Minister, we don't have time for. Make time. Chitty climbed in, toolbox clutched on his lap. The door closed with a solid thunk that sealed him in cool silence. He pressed his bare feet against the floor mat, toes curling into the soft fabric. Through the window, the scrubland and red dust that made up his world suddenly felt distant. The engine surged as Corporal Musa accelerated, and the sedan lurched forward. Dust plumes rose behind them, coating the road they'd just repaired in a fresh layer of grit. Chitty watched the thorn trees blur past, each kilometer carrying him closer to a place he'd been told not to go. Beezy jabbed at his smartwatch, the screen casting blue light across his face. 30 minutes. That's all we have before the inspection officially starts. I heard you the first time, Adewale said. State News Network is already there. Daily Vanguard sent a photographer. If we arrive late, Senator Akinwale will have his headline. Adewale rubbed his temple. I'm aware. Chitty studied the minister's reflection in the window. Tension pulled at the corners of his mouth, the same expression Papa wore when a customer questioned his prices. Political pressure, mechanical pressure. Maybe they weren't so different. Both required careful handling to avoid a breakdown. Tell me about your studies, Chitty. Adewale turned to face him. What subjects do you struggle with? The question landed like a stone in Chitty's stomach. He traced the toolbox's handle with one thumb, finding comfort in the worn metal. Reading comprehension. History dates. Long division. But you understand fuel injectors? Yes, sir. Compression ratios? Yes. The difference between two-stroke and four-stroke engines? Chitty nodded. These weren't mysteries, they were logic you could touch, systems that followed rules. Not like history where you memorized dead men's names without understanding why they mattered. Beezy's eyes found Chitty in the rearview mirror. Minister, bringing a village boy to an official inspection will create optics we can't control. The press will ask questions. Let them. Senator Akinwale will spin this as. Beezy. Adewale's jaw tightened, muscle jumping beneath the skin. The conversation is over. Silence filled the sedan except for the hum of tires on packed earth. Chitty watched the back of Beezy's neck flush red, then fade to normal. Politics was like an overheated engine, pressure building until something gave way. The road crested a rise and Amakeek Village Primary School came into view. Chitty's chest constricted. The low concrete structure squatted beneath a faded turquoise roof, paint peeling in long strips. The signboard, Knowledge is Wealth, had cracked diagonally, leaving Knowledge is We visible from the road. A loose sheet of tin clanged against the roof support, metal on metal, a sound Chitty had heard every day of his education. Corporal Musa slowed as the front gate appeared. A thick brass padlock gleamed against the wire mesh, securing the entrance despite the morning sun climbing toward noon. Two teachers stood just inside, Mr. Samuel Anyuha and Mrs. Ifioma Dyke, their brooms moving in slow, purposeless strokes across already swept ground. It's locked. Beezy leaned forward. Why would the gate be locked during school hours? Adewale said nothing, but his hand pressed flat against the armrest. Children crowded the fence line, small fingers gripping the wire mesh. Their white and blue uniforms formed a living border along the compound's perimeter. As the sedan rolled to a stop, whispers erupted, a wave of sound that built and crashed against the locked gate. Is that Chitty? Why is he in the minister's car? I thought Madame Ebra sent him home. Chitty sank lower in his seat. Every eye tracked him through the tinted windows, their gazes heavy with questions he couldn't answer. Shame burned in his throat, familiar and bitter. The sedan's doors opened and heat poured in. Adewale stepped onto the dirt, straightening his jacket despite the temperature. Beezy followed, already checking his watch again. Chitty clutched his toolbox and emerged last, bare feet meeting dust. The whispers grew louder. Madame Ebra Okafor strode from the main building, her blue headscarf bright against the faded walls. She moved with the confidence of someone who owned this space, her shoes clicking against the concrete walkway. When she reached the gate, her smile appeared, practiced, professional, completely false. Minister Okonjo. She inclined her head. Welcome to Amakeek Village Primary. We've been expecting you. Then why is the gate locked? Adewale gestured at the padlock. Security drills, Minister. In these uncertain times we must protect our students. Her eyes flicked to Chidi, then away as if he were a stain she couldn't acknowledge. I'm sure you understand. It's mid-morning. School is in session. Adewale pointed at the children pressed against the fence. Your students are already here. Nevertheless. Open the gate. Madame Ebra's smile tightened at the corners. She turned and signaled to Samuel and Ifioma, who abandoned their brooms and moved to block the gate's opening. Their bodies formed a wall, shoulders touching, faces blank. Dust kicked up along the road. Chidi turned to see a white van approaching. State News Network, emblazoned across its side in bold letters. Behind it, a motorcycle carried someone with a camera bag. The press is here. Beezy's voice climbed. Minister, we need to open the gate. Adewale's words dropped like hammer blows. Madame Ebra's jaw worked, chewing something invisible. Sweat beaded at her temple despite the headscarf. She nodded once, sharp and reluctant, and Samuel produced a key from his pocket. The padlock clicked open. Samuel pulled the gate back just wide enough for one person to pass, the metal scraping against concrete. Chidi moved toward the gap, toolbox banging against his leg. Samuel's hand shot out and clamped around Chidi's arm, fingers digging into muscle. Not you. The words were quiet, meant only for Chidi, but Adewale heard them. He closed the distance in 3 strides and gripped Samuel's wrist, his own knuckles whitening. Let him go. Minister, this boy is not supposed to be here today. He was told. I know what he was told. Adewale's voice carried across the compound. Let him go. The crowd surged closer. Parents and villagers who'd gathered for the inspection pressed against the fence line, voices rising in a crescendo of protest. Market chairwoman Ngozi Emma to push to the front, her wrapper bright yellow against the dusty ground. The minister is being disrespected, she shouted. Open the gate properly. Let the boy through. What are you hiding? Samuel released Chidi's arm and stepped back, hands raised. The gate swung wider, groaning on rusted hinges. Adewale entered first, Chidi at his side, and the crowd followed, a tide of bodies and voices that flowed past the teacher's weak barrier. Reporter Ngozi Olatunji arrived with her camera crew, equipment already recording. Microphones captured the shouting, the accusations, the tension crackling like static in the dry air. Chidi watched the red recording light blink, documenting everything. Inside the compound, decay revealed itself in layers. Peeling classroom walls showed bare concrete beneath faded blue paint. Broken desks lay stacked in corners, their legs snapped or missing. A basketball hoop hung at a 40-degree angle, net long gone. The courtyard's cracked concrete caught rainwater in stagnant pools, breeding grounds for mosquitoes. But it was the storeroom that drew Chidi's attention. A brand new chain and padlock secured its door, the brass gleaming in stark contrast to the rust and neglect surrounding it. Fresh scratches marked the doorframe where the lock had been installed recently. Why is that room locked? Adewale pointed. Valuable supplies. Madame Ebra's voice had lost its professional polish. We must protect government property. Show me. I don't have the key with me at present. Then find it. While Madame Ebra fumbled with her phone, Chidi circled the staff office. Behind it, barely visible from the main compound, sat a stack of unopened boxes. He moved closer, reading the labels. Federal Ministry of Education, Repair Grant 2024. Dust coated them thick as fur, undisturbed except where lizards had left tracks. The tape sealing each box remained intact. Minister. Chidi's voice came out smaller than he intended. Back here. Adewale joined him, Beezy and the camera crew trailing behind. The boxes formed a pyramid against the wall, 6 high and 4 deep. Enough materials to repair every broken desk, repaint every wall, fix the roof that leaked during rainy season. All sitting and used while children studied in decay. A figure emerged from the crowd, Chief Emeka Okafor, no relation to the head teacher despite sharing a name. He wore traditional clothing, his wrapper secured with a leather belt, and carried himself with the authority of age. He approached Adewale and extended a folded piece of paper, his hand steady. Minister. You should see this. Adewale unfolded the document. Chidi read over his shoulder, struggling with some words but catching the important ones. Expenses. Disbursed. Roofing repairs. 2.4 million naira. Teacher training. 1.8 million naira. Status. Fully completed. The paper trembled in Adewale's grip. He turned to where Madame Ebra stood frozen, her smile finally dead. This ledger shows all repair funds were disbursed months ago, fully spent on materials and training. Yes, Minister. The money was used exactly as intended. Then why are those boxes unopened? He gestured at the stack. Why is the roof still leaking? Why are desks broken and walls crumbling? Sweat rolled down Madame Ebera's temple, tracing a line through her makeup. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came, only the sound of her breathing, rapid and shallow. Chidi understood then. The hostility, the locked gate, the order to stay home, none of it was about his intelligence or his struggles with reading comprehension. It was about visibility. A minister who never saw inside the school would never question the discrepancies between the ledger and reality. A boy labeled stupid and hidden away would never stand here, witnessing the truth unfold. The camera crew recorded everything. Reporter Ngozi's microphone caught the silence stretching between Adewale's question and Madame Ebera's non-answer. Parents and villagers pressed closer, their murmurs building to demands for explanation. The storeroom's new padlock gleamed in the sun, protecting secrets that were already spilling into daylight. Somewhere in the distance, that loose sheet of tin clanged against the roof, metal crying out against neglect that could have been prevented with money that was supposed to arrive but never did. Adewale folded the ledger carefully and slipped it into his jacket pocket. When he looked at Madame Ebera again, his expression carried the weight of authority backed by evidence. We're going to have a very long conversation about where those millions of naira actually went. Madame Ebera Okafor pivoted on her heel and marched toward the administrative office, her blue headscarf whipping behind her like a flag. The door slammed, rattling the window frames, and moments later the loudspeaker crackled to life with a screech that made children clap hands over their ears. Attention! This is head teacher Ebera Okafor speaking. Her voice boomed across the compound, distorted by static. Minister Adewale Okonjo has brought a known troublemaker to disrupt our learning environment. I am requesting immediate intervention from village security to remove these individuals before they endanger our children. The words echoed off concrete walls and faded into stunned silence. Chidi's fingers tightened around his toolbox handle until his knuckles went pale. Parents exchanged glances while pupils craned their necks to see Adewale's reaction. Through the office window, Chidi watched Madame Ebera lift a phone to her ear, her free hand gesturing sharply. Her mouth moved fast, urgent as she spoke to whoever answered. She's calling Officer Kalechi, Chief Emeka murmured beside Adewale. Community Safety Corps. Bizi pressed close to the minister. We need to leave. Now, before this becomes. We're not running. Adewale's jaw set in a hard line. The White State News Network van had already disgorged reporter Ngozi Olatunji and her cameraman Peter Adebayo. The camera hoisted onto Peter's shoulder, red light blinking, lens sweeping across the schoolyard like a predator searching for prey. Ngozi thrust her microphone toward the nearest cluster of parents, questions firing rapid as gunshots. Market Chairwoman Ngozi Emeta leaned toward Chief Emeka, her voice pitched low but carrying. Senator Akinwale will feast on this footage. The education minister causing chaos at a village school? He'll spin it as proof the ministry is incompetent. Children began chanting, the sound building from a whisper to a roar. Chidi, Chidi, Chidi. Some clapped in rhythm while others stamped their feet, dust rising with each impact. Is the minister going to be arrested? A girl in pigtails asked her teacher. Quiet. Mrs. Ifeoma snapped, but her voice lacked conviction. Adewale raised both hands, palms out. The gesture cut through the noise like a blade. Gradually, reluctantly, the crowd settled into uneasy silence. Even the chanting children fell still, though their eyes remained bright with excitement. This visit was scheduled weeks ago. Adewale's voice carried without shouting, each word measured and clear. I am here in my official capacity as Minister of Education to conduct a routine inspection. Nothing more. Show them, Bizi whispered, already reaching for his briefcase. Bizi fumbled with the clasps and withdrew a cream-colored document stamped with the ministry's seal. He held it high, turning so everyone could see the official letterhead, the typed text, the signatures in blue ink. Ministry appointment letter, Bizi announced. Dated 3 weeks ago. Confirming today's inspection. Peter swung his camera to capture the document. Ngozi pushed closer, microphone extended. Minister Okonjo, can you explain why the head teacher is calling for your removal? Before Adewale could answer, Chidi felt the minister's hand rest gently on his shoulder, not gripping, just present. A silent question. Chidi looked up, met Adewale's eyes and found something there that didn't match the chaos surrounding them. Trust maybe? Or belief? Chitty stepped forward. His bare feet whispered against cracked concrete as he moved to where everyone could see him. The toolbox dangled at his side, familiar weight steadying him. From his pocket he withdrew the thin wire he'd used to clear the fuel line, the metal still stained with dark residue. The minister's car broke down on the road. Chitty's voice started quiet but grew stronger as he spoke. Fuel line was blocked. The engine couldn't draw petrol properly, so it died. He held up the wire, turning it so sunlight caught the grime coating its surface. I used this to clear the blockage. Pushed it through until the fuel flowed again. The car is parked right there, he pointed to the sedan at the gate, running perfectly now. You can check if you don't believe me. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Parents nodded to each other, some smiling. A man in a mechanic's coveralls, someone Chitty recognized from Papa's workshop, called out, "That boy knows his engines." Learned from Obina himself. Born engineer, someone else added. Future inventor. Pride swelled in Chitty's chest, unfamiliar and overwhelming. But he caught Mr. Samuel and Mrs. Ifioma exchanging nervous glances, their earlier confidence cracking like the courtyard pavement beneath their feet. The growl of motorcycle engines announced new arrivals. 2 uniformed officers dismounted and strode through the gate, batons hanging from their belts. Officer Kalechi Udo led, his face set in practiced authority. Behind him, Officer Grace Namdi scanned the crowd with sharp eyes. Madame Ebra emerged from the office and rushed toward them, arm extended like a weapon. Those 2. The man in the suit and the boy. They're endangering the children. Remove them immediately. Officer Kalechi approached Adewale, hand resting on his baton. Identification. Bizi thrust forward the ministry badge, the laminated card showing Adewale's photograph and official title. Officer Kalechi examined it, tilting the badge to check for forgery marks. That's fake. Madame Ebra's voice pitched higher. Anyone can print a badge. They're criminals posing as officials. This badge bears the ministry seal, Officer Kalechi said slowly. Forged? Obviously forged. Peter's camera swiveled between speakers, capturing everything. Ngozi's microphone caught every word, every accusation, every denial. Villagers shouted conflicting opinions. Some defending Adewale, others questioning his legitimacy, a few just adding to the noise because silence felt impossible. Chitty watched the chaos build, each voice layering on the last until individual words became meaningless. This was how systems broke down, not from a single catastrophic failure, but from too many small malfunctions compounding until the whole mechanism ceased. Adewale's patience shattered. He stepped toward Madame Ebra, closing the distance until they stood an arm's length apart. When he spoke, his voice cut through the din with the precision of a scalpel. You called this child stupid. You barred him from school to hide him from me. And I know why. He withdrew Chief Emeka's folded ledger from his pocket and held it between them. Federal repair grants. Millions of naira allocated for roofing and teacher training. All marked, dispersed, and completed. But the roof still leaks. The boxes sit unopened. Where did the money go, Madame Okafor? The crowd fell silent. Even the children sensed the shift, the way the air itself seemed to press down heavier. Madame Ebra's eyes fixed on the paper in Adewale's hand. Her expression transformed, fear replacing arrogance, calculation replacing bluster. She lunged forward, fingers hooked like claws, reaching for Bizi's briefcase where more documents rested. Give me that. Her nails scraped leather as she grabbed the handle. Bizi yanked backward, the briefcase swinging wild. Papers rustled inside. Madame Ebra didn't release her grip, pulling harder, her feet sliding on dust as she fought for control. Adewale moved to block her, his arm creating a barrier. Let go. Officer Grace stepped between them, hands raised. Everyone calmed down. But Madame Ebra twisted, using her momentum to wrench the briefcase sideways. The motion sent her stumbling into Peter, whose camera dipped sharply. The microphone flew from Ngozi's hand and clattered across the courtyard, feedback shrieking from the speakers. Children screamed and scattered, their white and blue uniforms flashing between adult bodies. Chitty pressed himself against the wall, toolbox clutched to his chest. This wasn't mechanical failure anymore, this was total system collapse. The scent hit him before he understood its meaning. Acrid, bitter, the smell of paper burning. Chitty turned toward the staff building's rear, where thin smoke curled skyward in lazy ribbons. Fire, he said, but the word came out too quiet. Corporal Musa noticed too. He pointed, his voice cutting through the chaos. Smoke. Behind the building. The crowd pivoted as one. Parents surged toward the source while teachers shouted for calm that wouldn't come. Adewale broke free from the knot of bodies surrounding him and ran, Beezy stumbling in his wake. Chitty followed, his bare feet finding purchase on ground he'd walked every school day of his life. Behind the staff office, the school incinerator roared with fresh flames. Its metal barrel glowed red at the base, heat shimmering the air above it. Inside, papers curled and blackened, edges dancing with orange fire before collapsing into ash. Chitty glimpsed words on burning pages: Federal Ministry, Disbursement, 2024, before they dissolved into carbon. Adewale grabbed the incinerator's handle, then jerked back when metal seared his palm. He looked around frantically for water, for anything to stop the destruction, but the flames had already consumed what mattered. Officer Kelechi arrived last, breathing hard. He stared at the fire, at Adewale's desperate expression, and shook his head. "I have no authority to interfere with internal school waste disposal." "That's not waste." Beezy's voice cracked. "That's evidence of embezzlement." "So you claim. But I only see a school burning trash." Madame Ebra appeared at the corner of the building, smoothing her headscarf. Sweat glistened on her face, but her smile had returned, thin and sharp as a blade. "I hope there's no problem, Minister. We maintain very strict waste management protocols." Adewale turned to her, ledger still clutched in his fist. But it was just one document now, easily dismissed as falsified. The original ministry records, the detailed financial logs that would prove corruption beyond doubt. They were ash floating on hot air. The camera crew arrived, Peter filming the smoldering incinerator while Ngozi fired questions nobody answered. Villagers crowded close, their earlier excitement curdling into confusion. Without proof, this looked like exactly what Madame Ebra wanted it to look like. Chaos caused by an incompetent minister making baseless accusations. Chief Emeka pushed through the crowd and stood beside Adewale, his weathered face grave. "The original ledgers are gone? All of them. Then we have nothing but copies and testimony. Which means nothing in court." Beezy's hands trembled as he clutched his briefcase. "Senator Akinwale will destroy us. This footage shows only disorder, not evidence." Chitty watched Adewale's shoulders sag, watched the certainty drain from his posture like oil from a cracked pan. The minister had believed truth mattered, that evidence would speak louder than lies. But Chitty understood systems better than that. Sometimes the malfunction wasn't just one broken part, it was the whole machine designed to protect its own corruption. Madame Ebra folded her arms across her chest, smile widening. Around them, the crowd's murmurs shifted from supportive to uncertain. Children asked questions their parents couldn't answer. Teachers whispered among themselves, allegiances reforming. The incinerator crackled, consuming the last scraps of proof, while smoke rose into the merciless sky and cameras recorded everything that didn't matter. Evening shadows stretched across Amakik Village Primary School, turning the cracked courtyard into a patchwork of gold and gray. The crowd had swelled since the incinerator incident. More parents arriving from market stalls, more villagers drawn by rumors of scandal. Their voices layered thick as smoke, questions without answers building pressure that had nowhere to vent. Chitty leaned against the rusted gate, toolbox between his feet, wiping grease from his fingers onto his shorts. The metal smears wouldn't come clean, so he stopped trying. Around him, adults argued in circles while teachers huddled near the administrative office, their postures defensive. Market chairwoman Ngozi Emma pushed through the crowd toward Minister Adewale, her yellow wrapper dusty at the hem. "Minister, tempers are fraying. Some parents are saying this is just city politics disrupting their children's safety." "We have evidence," Adewale started. "You had evidence. Now you have ash and accusations." She gestured at the murmuring crowd. "That's different." Officer Kelechi Udo materialized at Adewale's elbow, his voice pitched low but urgent. "Minister, the situation is no longer safe. I suggest you withdraw before nightfall." His hand rested on his baton, not threatening but present. "For your own protection." Officer Grace Namdi scanned the swelling crowd, counting exits, calculating risks. Her fingers drummed against her belt. Beezy pressed close to Adewale, phone screen glowing in the fading light. "Senator Akinwale already has people at State News Network headquarters. By morning this will be spun as ministerial incompetence." He tilted the screen so Adewale could read the message from Governor Teo Fagbemi's office. "Contain this now or resign." The words hung between them like a blade suspended by thread. Chitty watched Adewale's jaw work, tension cording the muscles in his neck. This was what failure looked like on a man who'd believed systems could be fixed if you just found the right lever to pull. But Chitty understood something about systems that Adewale seemed to have forgotten. When one approach failed, you didn't give up, you found another angle. Papa always said a seized engine required patience and lateral thinking. Direct force only made things worse. Chitty stayed near the gate, his calm presence a counterpoint to the adult chaos. He traced patterns in the dust with his toe, creating and erasing designs while his mind worked through the problem. Adewale had approached this like removing a stripped bolt, applying steady pressure in one direction. But sometimes you needed to reverse course, try a different tool entirely. Adewale's gaze found Chitty across the courtyard. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the minister's expression. The defeat faded, replaced by calculation. He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over the screen as he scrolled through contacts. "What are you doing?" Beezy hissed. "Troubleshooting." Adewale's mouth curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. "If the physical evidence is gone, we need digital breadcrumbs." Reporter Ngozi Olatunji sensed the shift. She signaled to Peter, who hoisted his camera and adjusted the lens. The red light blazed to life, and Ngozi spoke into her microphone. "This is Ngozi Olatunji, State News Network, reporting live from Amakik Village Primary School where a developing situation." Adewale raised his phone high, thumb hovering over the speaker button. The crowd quieted, drawn by the promise of something new. Even the children stopped their restless movement, sensing importance in the gesture. "I'm calling the Enugu Provincial Treasury Audit Desk." Adewale's voice carried across the courtyard. "There's an emergency audit channel for situations exactly like this. Digital financial records that can't be burned." He pressed dial. The ringing echoed through the speaker, each tone sharp in the evening air. One ring. 2. 3. Provincial Treasury Audit Desk, Auditor Clara Obifune speaking. The voice cut through the gathering darkness, crisp and professional. Villagers surged closer, forming a tight semicircle around Adewale. Peter's camera captured everything. The minister with his phone held high, the crowd pressing in, Madame Ebra frozen near the staff office. "Auditor Obifune, this is Minister Adewale Okonjo, Ministry of Education. I'm requesting an immediate real-time ledger check of the federal rural education grant allocated to Amakik Village Primary School. Transaction history for the past 12 months. Keys clicked on the other end of the line. "One moment, Minister. I'm accessing the secure database now." The wait stretched. Chitty counted his own heartbeats, steady as a piston's rhythm. Madame Ebra took a step backward, then another, her earlier confidence crumbling like rust flaking off old metal. "I have the records." Clara's voice returned, neutral and exact. The federal rural education grant to Amakik Village Primary School totaled 18 million naira, disbursed in 3 installments over 6 months. "And the destination accounts? That's unusual." A pause, more clicking. "The primary beneficiary account is registered to a personal banking profile, not an institutional account. Account holder, Ebra Okafor. Wire transfers totaling 17.4 million naira." Gasps rippled through the crowd like wind through tall grass. Chief Emeka lowered his walking stick, his weathered face collapsing into shame. "My cousin's name," he murmured. "She shares my family name but not our honor." Mr. Samuel and Mrs. Ifioma exchanged glances, then stepped away from Madame Ebra as if proximity itself could contaminate them. The other teachers followed, a slow erosion of support that left the head teacher standing alone in the dying light. "Lies." Madame Ebra's voice cracked. "That audit is falsified. The minister is framing me." She lunged toward Adewale, hand outstretched to grab the phone. Officer Grace moved faster, intercepting with an arm that blocked Madame Ebra's path. The head teacher collided with the barrier, stumbled, and Officer Kalechi caught her other arm. "Madame Okafor," Officer Kalechi's voice carried formal weight now, "you are under provincial investigation for financial fraud. Do not resist." "Investigation?" Madame Ebra twisted against his grip. "On what authority?" The growl of motorcycle engines answered her question. 2 uniformed officers from the Enugu Financial Crimes Task Force rolled through the gate, their bikes gleaming despite the dust. They dismounted in synchronized movements, efficiency born from practice. The lead officer approached Adewale, tablet extended. "Minister Okonjo, we received the emergency audit alert from Treasury. Digital warrant for detention and investigation of Ebra Okafor." She swiped the screen, displaying official seals and authorization codes. Madame Ebra's legs buckled. Officer Kalechi held her upright as the task force officer produced handcuffs, the metal clicking shut around wrists that had signed false ledgers and stolen futures. The crowd erupted. Cheers mixed with angry shouts, relief mixed with betrayal. Parents embraced while children asked questions nobody fully answered. Peter's camera caught it all, the handcuffs glinting, Madame Ebra's face collapsing into tears, villagers raising fists in victory. Mr. Samuel stepped forward, shoulders hunched. His eyes found Chitty and held. "I apologize." The words came rough, dragged from somewhere deep. "To you, Chitty Nwosu. For dismissing your talent. For the humiliation." He swallowed. "You deserved better." Mrs. Ifeoma joined him, her hands twisted together. "We knew you were brilliant with machines. We didn't know how to teach you the other things. And instead of helping, we made it worse." Parents nodded, some wiping their eyes. A woman Chitty recognized as his classmate Ada's mother pressed forward. "My daughter told me you fixed her brother's bicycle. Said you barely looked at it before you knew what was wrong. That's intelligence, even if it doesn't fit in a test booklet." Pride and shame warred in Chitty's chest. He wanted to accept their words, but they came too late and cost too much. Still, he nodded because Papa taught him that grace mattered even when justice came slow. The task force officers guided Madame Ebra toward their motorcycles. She moved like someone sleepwalking, her blue headscarf askew, the certainty that had armored her stripped away layer by layer. Adewale raised his hand again and the crowd quieted. Peter's camera lens tracked him, the red light a constant witness. "What happened here goes beyond one person's corruption." Adewale's voice carried across the darkening courtyard. "This system failed Chitty Nwosu and students like him. Children whose intelligence doesn't fit traditional academic molds." He paused, letting the weight settle. "So I'm announcing the Rural Skills and Innovation Initiative. Full scholarships for students with exceptional hands-on abilities. Vocational training partnerships. Recognition that brilliance comes in many forms." The crowd's murmurs turned approving. Chief Emeka thumped his walking stick against concrete in agreement. "Chitty Nwosu will receive the first full provincial scholarship." Adewale looked directly at him. "He's earned it." Movement at the crowd's edge drew Chitty's attention. A lean man in oil-stained coveralls pushed through the gathered villagers, moving with purpose. "Papa." Obinna Nwosu's face showed a mix of pride and confusion as he approached, clearly unsure why he'd been summoned from the workshop. Adewale's expression shifted, surprise then recognition dawning like sunrise. "Obinna Nwosu?" Papa stopped, studying the minister with the same careful attention he gave to complex engine problems. "Minister Okonjo. It's been years. 10 years. Adewale closed the distance between them. "You were the senior mechanic for the federal government transport division. You maintained my convoy when I was deputy minister of infrastructure. Before the budget cuts." Papa's voice carried no bitterness, just statement of fact. "Political reshuffling made my position redundant." Chitty watched them shake hands, two men connected by history he'd never known. Papa had worked for the government once, had fixed ministers' cars before everything fell apart. The knowledge settled in his chest, another piece of the system finally making sense. "Your son saved me today." Adewale gestured to Chitty. "Fixed my car when it broke down." Showed mechanical intuition that most trained technicians lack. Papa's hand found Chitty's shoulder, grip firm and steady. "He's been learning since he could hold a wrench. Sometimes I think he understands machines better than I do." Camera flashes strobed across the courtyard as reporters captured the moment. Peter circled them, lens tracking every angle. Ngozi thrust her microphone forward, catching Adewale's next words. The minister clasped Chitty's hand, the small fingers still stained with grease and road dust, the palm calloused from tool handles. Adewale's grip was firm, respectful, acknowledging equal to equal. The smartest boy in Amekik just taught the minister how to fix more than a car. Adewale's grin split his face, genuine and unguarded. The words would replay across every news broadcast in Enugu State by dawn, but in that moment they belonged only to the people gathered in the failing light. Chitty felt the weight of every gaze, every camera, every expectation. But Papa's hand remained steady on his shoulder, and the minister's handshake didn't falter. Maybe intelligence wasn't one thing measured one way. Maybe it was a toolbox, different instruments for different problems, each one valuable when the situation called for it. The crowd began to disperse as darkness claimed the edges of the compound. Parents collected children, teachers trudged toward their homes, reporters packed equipment. But Chitty stayed at the gate with his toolbox, Papa beside him, watching the minister's sedan pull away trailing red dust that glowed in the taillights. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new systems to understand and repair. But tonight, for the first time in memory, Chitty felt like something more than the stupid boy who couldn't memorize dates. He felt like what he'd always been, a mechanic who understood how broken things could be made whole again. If you enjoyed this story, then don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell to get a reminder each time we upload new videos. We drop very exciting and inspiring stories twice daily. Thank you for your continued support. See you again soon.